Guarding my heart. I've always loved night shifts. The stillness and ambience of the wee hours gave me time to think and reflect. The shifts also served as my breather for my wife, who frequently ranted at me incessantly, as we always did our duty in pairs. I normally minded my own business with my fellow security staff. I was cordial, but as most of the men who worked were much older than me, we did not vibe as much. We would take turns doing rounds and monitor the CCTV together, every now and then. In between these rounds and monitoring, my head would be buried in a book. By 6 a.m. the next morning, I would be packing my stuff, preparing to go home, get some rest, and prepare to do it all over again. That was my life. It was monotonous and boring, but I was content. I was making ends meet for me and my wife, and that was all that matters. This particular night, I was informed by the front office that a new security guard would be joining me. I was nonchalant, thinking it was yet another old man who could not last 5 minutes and attempting to engage me in an interesting conversation. But as I walked into the security room, I almost stopped at the silhouette I saw. Contrary to what I thought the new employee would look like, he was actually young, possibly my age. He was strapping and clearly took care of his body well. To put it short, he was buff beyond belief. When he turned around and met my eyes, his dazzling blue eyes took me aback momentarily. He had disheveled brownish blonde hair, the type that you'd normally see on dudes labeled as bad boys. What was this man doing as a security detail? He looked like he stepped straight out of a magazine. "Hey, I'm Lance," he introduced as he took strides towards me and extended his large hand. I shook his hand and was certain mine were clammy, as it always was when I was nervous. Why was I nervous? He was just another coworker. As expected, my response came out as a croak, and I mentally berated myself for letting this man get on my nerves so quickly. "Steve," I replied. "You're the new guy?" He nodded. "Try to sound more excited, can you?" he joked. How could I possibly get excited when such a charming figure would be working with me all night long? As I took my usual seat next to Lance and started teaching him the system here, I found myself stuttering every now and then, especially since we were so close together. When I spoke, I could feel his eyes intently at me, and I did not trust myself to meet those ocean blue eyes. When we started working on our own task assignments, eyes on our individual computer monitors, I could not help but discreetly look when he reached out for things on his desk. For the night shift, we were only clad in short-sleeved polo shirts, embedded with the company logo, so his attire boasted his muscular arms immaculately. I love my wife, I repeatedly chanted in my head. Since college, I had found myself being attracted to guys of the same gender every now and then, too. But I assumed that phase had ended when I had married Michaela. Apparently, it has not. Since the moment I saw Lance, I'd been enthralled by him. We exchanged small talks throughout the late night, but mainly minded our own workstations. I preferred it that way because those few and brief talks we had, Lance had already proven that he was more than a pretty face. He was extremely eloquent and seemed smart. I despised this fact because I knew it would be even more difficult for me to contain my urges to just kiss him square on the lips if he was intelligent and had substance. During his break, he grabbed coffee at the break room momentarily before coming back to the security room, and to my utmost surprise, grabbing a book. "Do you read?" I asked before I could control it. He let out a small laugh. "You sound so surprised." "I love to read. And you?" "So do I. Forgive me for sounding so shocked. The moment you walked in, I've just been amazed by you." I found myself low-key confessing my adoration for him. "What was it? The pretty face, huh?" He smiled cockily. I rolled my eyes jokingly, positive I was blushing profusely because of that damn dimpled smile. "The personality and eloquence. But go off, sweetie," I replied. His smirk was wiped off by his reply, and he instead seemed genuinely touched. "Yo, slow down before you find yourself falling in love with me or something," he jested. "But seriously, thanks for that. I know it's kinda random that a young dude like me is here, but I really just need another job to support my mom." He did not elaborate further, and I continued with my work throughout that shift. But from then on, he had my respect. Not only was he a beautiful face with a beefy build, an elaborate and learned speaker, but a family man. I respected that, and I found my adoration for him growing. The next few days, we developed a routine. He started bringing coffee with him when he entered the security room to start his shift. He hit my favorite coffee at first try, black coffee. He was elated and made it a routine to bring coffee. On the other hand, I always shared my snacks with him and made it a point to bring extra food, as he had one hell of an appetite. I looked forward to working more as I now had company I enjoyed. Slowly, I found myself growing more and more comfortable in his presence. He told me about his mom and how he had stopped studying to focus on working when she got sick. and he had not been able to go back since. He was working 2 jobs, as a security guard at night to morning, and as a grocery clerk from afternoon to night. How he managed to do it, I did not know, but I surely admired his grit. On the other hand, I started sharing my experiences with him, my married life and how Michaela was like. I was not much of a sharer, but I could not help it one night when I was in a sour mood after a fight. "Rough night?" he started as he plopped down in his chair and handed me a cup of coffee. I nodded and muttered a soft thanks. He continued staring at me, clearly waiting to elaborate. "Wife and I had a screaming contest. Well, what I mean is she screamed and I got screamed at." Lance laughed and shook his head. Woman, woman. See, this is why I gave up on them. My eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "You gave up on him?" He looked taken aback as if he had not meant to blurt out loud. He sighed and whispered, "I'm gay. I'm sorry if I've not been honest with you. I just felt really comfortable and easy with you, so I wanted to ease the confession. Just in case you'd feel uncomfortable, you know? Working with people like me." "Hey, I'm good with that. You do you. You can be yourself with me," I replied, although my heart was thumping in my chest so quickly. For whatever reason, I could not pinpoint exactly why. But I knew there was hope rekindled inside me. Perhaps I was ecstatic deep down after discovering that Lance was gay. I had to swiftly remind myself that I was married to banish these forbidden thoughts. Lance cracked a Cheshire smile and tapped me on the shoulder. I swear every contact our skin made was electric. It was likely one-sided, and I should definitely try to stop it, but it seemed like the force was too strong. "Good then, because I've been waiting to unleash this side of me since I met you, and immediately felt at ease with you," he replied. "Anyway, back to your story time. What happened with you and wifey?" "She basically said I'm a useless husband and that my income was insufficient to support her. I don't know how to deal with her expectations anymore, since she lives such a lavish lifestyle, and I'm out here toiling in a 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift, after working all afternoon in our small business," I ranted. "And her? What does she do?" Lance said inquisitively. "Go out with friends, monitor the business every now and then? I don't know, man." Lance huffed. "Sounds like a gold-digging wife if you ask me. How does she have the audacity to scold you when she's not the one doing shit? You deserve better." I cracked a small smile, and to my surprise, Lance reached out for my hand and soothed it. Our eyes met, but I swiftly withdrew my hand before anything else could ensue. It was bad enough that I was having marital problems, but to aggravate my dilemma, I just found out that this coworker of mine that I found so attractive is gay. This was not right. I was straight after all, or so I convinced myself. Why were these feelings blossoming? Why did he have such an impact on me? I refocused on my work and attempted to convince myself that this was a spur-of-the-moment feeling, amplified by my deteriorating relationship with my wife. "You still love her?" Lance asked out of the blue after minutes of silence, each of us working on our individual assignments. I was taken aback, but took a deep sigh. "I'm with her, so that's that." He shook his head vigorously and sighed. "You didn't answer the question." "Don't push it." Persistently, he scooted his office chair closer to me. "You're clearly unhappy, and it pains me to see you like this. Look, I've only known you for a couple of weeks, and yet I feel this strong concern towards you." I finally looked up and met his intense blue eyes. "And why is that?" I questioned. "Don't say it, don't say it," I repeated the mantra in my head. He could not possibly feel the same gravity towards me. I could not be able to keep my feelings at bay then. I have a wife, and this cannot happen. Without warning, he leaned in for a split second. I thought he was going to put his lips over mine. Did I hope that would happen? Honestly, a part of me did. But the other part of me is relieved because I did not need to confront my feelings towards him, since he did not do it. He leaned in and gave me a peck on the cheek. "There, because I just care for you and want you to be happy." "Thank you, Lance. I appreciate your camaraderie, but I'm fine. Michaela has always been like this. It's always been tough love." He shook his head and looked at me with much pity. "You deserve better. I mean, look at you. What a loving, hardworking guy, and you let a woman belittle you and use you like an ATM? I love her, Lance." He seemed annoyed at my stubbornness, but quickly changed his countenance. That told me he genuinely cared for me. "Okay, I support you and I'll always root for your happiness." The next month was the calm between the storms. While I was still working out my differences with Michaela at home, my dynamic with Lance continued to evolve. Since he had expressed being gay, he was much more open with me in terms of his experiences. And I even felt comfortable asking him about his lifestyle. "Do you, go to gay clubs?" Lance howled. "Me? In gay clubs?" Yeah, I look like the type, right? But sadly, I don't go as often anymore as I have to save up for mom's medicine and treatment these days. Yeah, I mean, you look like the type to live your life and party it up. He eyed me and raised an eyebrow. He seemed amused. So you think I'm a fuckboy, huh? I laughed. Something like that. What was the wildest thing you've ever done then? He scooted his office chair closer to mine, a habit that he was doing more and more frequently. Honestly, I loved it. Having company that I genuinely relished in. This monotonous and boring workplace was something I could not turn down. I don't think I've done any to suit your curiosity, sir, he said as he tapped my chest playfully. As with every touch, I knew I would turn red immediately. Flushed again? Don't like my playful moves, do you? Lance teased as he looked at me mischievously. There was no way that he did not know his impact on me. And if I say I like your playfulness, then what? I whispered. I was clearly threading on a thin line, especially since I knew how volatile my feelings were when it comes to Lance. He put his face adjacent to mine, so close that I could feel his heat radiating from his body, and hear his breathing ever so slightly. Then you better hope your wife doesn't find out. That snapped me back to reality, reminding me of this illicit romance. If you could even consider it romantic, that is. What, I hit a nerve? What happened now? Nothing, I just think my wife is cheating on me. The next day, my suspicions were confirmed after I stealthily followed my wife to work at our small business. We owned a small hardware downtown that she mended, or so I thought. She was sneakily meeting up with this much younger man and smooching him while our store was left unattended for the most part. That store was built on my blood and sweat while she relished life, shopped almost every day as though she was a millionaire. I was dejected, not because I still loved her, but because of all the years we spent together. I cherished those, even though I knew we had fallen out of love long before. I also pitied myself for providing for a woman who was running into the arms of another man. Lance must have sensed my melancholy because the moment I walked in the security room later that night, he eyed me with curiosity. "You good?" he asked, but I ignored him. "You're clearly not good." She cheated on me with some college-looking dude. She cheated on me while I worked hard every day to give her the life she aspires to have. Although I know we've had our fair share of differences, never would I have thought she would do this. "That bitch," he exclaimed. "This can't be. I won't let this happen to you. You don't deserve this. I'm gonna hatch the ultimate revenge plan." I stepped towards him and took his hand in mine. "Thank you for always looking out for me, Lance," I started. "But you don't need to fight my battles. I'm good with this. I won't let her simply stomp on you like that. It's not fair," he bellowed. He stopped dead in his tracks, and my eyes widened considerably at his blunder. After my initial shock, my eyes softened and my heart started beating uncontrollably. "I love you too much to see you hurt like this," he whispered as he caressed my face. "You deserve better." That was when I finally closed the gap between our lips and kissed him, as if my life depended on him. Years I have been married, but I have not felt this much intensity for a long time. Hell, perhaps I never felt this much intensity even at the onset of my relationship with Michaela. This was a different magnitude. It felt so right. I've been fighting this for a while too, I confessed. Not only because I'm married, but because, loving you as anything more than a friend, I just never thought I'm capable of it. "Because you're supposed to be straight?" he jested, and I laughed. "But the more I deny my feelings," I replied, "the stronger they got," we said in unison. We smiled at our synced response. All my life, I have always been a people pleaser. This might be my time to grab my happiness, and he was right in front of me by the name of Lance. Perhaps Michaela did us both a favor by cheating. Her actions made me confront my feelings for Lance and gave me the last push to get out of this loveless marriage. Maybe it was time to put myself first. While I figure out how to confront my issues at home with Michaela seemingly avoiding me, we were barely at home at the same time. My relationship with Lance continued to advance. At first, he seemed wary and was distancing himself from me after an intense kiss. But after I called him out and said, "Don't give me space, the last thing I want is to be away from you. Here, we are safe. We are in our own heaven." He dove into my arms, cuddled up with me on the couch at the far corner of the security room. "I don't want us to be confined in this room," he whispered. He hovered his lips over mine and kissed me softly over and over again. "I want to be out in the world, holding your hand while walking along the streets, doing grocery shopping with you, living our dreams." I kissed his forehead softly. "In due time," I reassured. I'm leaving her. You are? He asked, seemingly surprised. The assumption I had been hanging in the air since the night we first kissed. We had been messing around since then, borderline neglecting our duties here. Well, what can I say? Lance was smoking, and I could not control my hands when I was around him. The man was too gorgeous, and our feelings for each other much too intense. I'm leaving her, I announced with conviction, as I now caressed his face and looked him straight in the eyes for reassurance. I played with his hair, and he sighed in relief, leaning against me with his eyes closed. And I want you to come with me. Good, he replied. You deserve better, and I will love you forever if you let me. Now let's go show your bitch of an ex-wife what love is. Later that night, I finally mustered up the courage to leave her. I was exhausted from working my butt off only for her to spend my hard-earned money in a heartbeat with some young guy. I was tired of getting thrown foul words at whenever she was not pleased with my earnings or was unsatisfied by my effort. Hand in hand with Lance, I rang the doorbell and waited for her to answer. As soon as she saw me, she was about to go off, probably rant at how useless I was and how I needed to man up. But then she saw the figure next to me and her eyes widened to our intertwined hands. What the fuck is this? Why are you holding another man's hand right on our doorstep? She questioned, evidently seething at the sight of us. This is Lance, the man I'm in love with, and I'm not afraid to show it to the world now. Especially since you've been cheating on me with some hotshot young guy. And you're not afraid to show it off in town either. Fucking hell, Steve, you're embarrassing me. Neighbors might see or hear. Stop this bullshit right now and get in. You want my attention? You've got it now, jackass, she blurted out. Lance immediately stepped in front of me as though shielding me from the hurtful words Michaela was throwing around. But I was immune to those words, having to endure them on a day-to-day basis all these years. You don't get to talk to him like that, Lance defended. Not after everything he's done for you. He's a kind, loving, and hardworking man who deserves love, and not the emotional and verbal abuse you have put him through all these years. Michaela's eyes turned into slits as she turned as red as a tomato. Clearly, we were getting in our nerves, and she was extremely cautious about the neighbors finding out and her reputation being torn to bits. Fuck you two. Scums, the both of you. Take your shit out and get the fuck out of here before someone hears you. With this, she made way for us to step inside, and as soon as she closed the door, when we were all in, Lance walked back up to the door. Actually, you leave. This house was built on Steve's blood and sweat, and he needs to leave? I don't think so. Michaela almost hurled herself at Lance, but I restrained her and separated them. Who the fuck are you to tell me what to do, you gay fuck? You're both disgusting beyond words. Get out of my house. You're leaving or I'm calling my uncle, who just so happens to be the head of the police district, Lance threatened as he showed her a picture of him and a beefy man who resembled him. Michaela looked defeated, and she glared at me. But I knew she was out of words. After all, the house was indeed mine. In all our years of marriage, she never toiled a day. It was all me. You will pay for this, disgusting gay fucks. I never want to be in your presence ever again, she shouted as she marched in her bedroom, presumably to pack her stuff. Lance and I looked at each other in amusement as she stormed off. Neither do we. To be continued. Donate to us on Ko-fi to support our channel. Link in the description. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.